Welcome back to another episode of the Life Sciences Podcast. I'm Linda Robertson, your host, and I'm excited to have our guest today, Dr. Shah, who is on a mission to change the way blood pressure monitoring is done. He is a cardiovascular professional who has had a great journey in his career and has now gone into the entrepreneurial world. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Shah, and he will tell you about his professional journey and why he is now on a journey to help bring to the population a chance for individuals to be able to monitor their blood pressure for prevention. And wearable smart technology is where we're going, and he is on a journey to help us do that. Please help me introduce Dr. Shah. Well, thanks for joining us, Dr. Shah. Really nice to have you here. And, if you don't mind telling the audience about yourself, give a bit of background, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for having me. So I am a clinical cardiologist. I've been in practice for over 15 years. And I started my sort of professional background in Kansas City in a city general hospital, which was a great place to be a medical student. But then I ended up going to Massachusetts General Hospital for my training, which was amazing and sort of opened my eyes to all the things you could do in medicine, and had these amazing colleagues that have become lifelong friends. And then did my clinical cardiology fellowship at Washington University, which was superb, sort of high intensity and very large academic center. And then I did something different. I went out and started my own practice from scratch in Portland, Oregon. And so I built that from basically nothing into a very big, busy clinical practice. And for the last 3.5 years, after I got recruited to Mayo Clinic, and so I've been working at Mayo Clinic and set up their Center for Thoracic Aortic Aneurysms in their Arizona practice. And so it's been a sort of long and winding journey in clinical medicine, but very deep and in sort of full-time clinical experience until about a couple of years ago, when I started thinking, how could I sort of then apply all this time and expertise and knowledge and clinical care delivery of patients one-on-one to a broader population, to having a bigger impact perhaps. And as I started looking and thinking about that, I sort of went through a path of exploration and ended up finding an opportunity as the chief medical officer for this Swiss startup that I'm working for now called Aktiia, which I'm sure we can talk about, but is all about hypertension, high blood pressure optimization, and personalization. So that's been my sort of professional journey.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that, because there's so many paths individuals can go on, but as you get exposed to something that lights your passion and your fire, then you move on to the next. And cardiology, obviously, we talked about that during our conversation about so many individuals are being impacted with heart issues and hypertension and so forth. So we'll talk a bit about that. But you spent 7 years building your practice and doing that from scratch. Maybe tell us about what inspired you to do that, because that's not easy, right?
Yeah.
And what were the challenges, your journey and challenges along the way? I mean, I built my own business too, so hey, I hear you. But let's talk about that.
Yeah, it was a different step in this day and age. It's not the common thing to do in medicine, certainly in the US at least, is to go out and kind of put your own shingle up. But and my sort of mentors at Washington University sort of looked at me funny when I said, I'm going to go start my own practice. But it was actually a tremendous learning experience, and it was so valuable, because not only did I have to learn at that time, right after sort of finishing training, of really how to become an expert clinician, because that's the time when you really learn. The first 3 to 5 years after training, when you're on your own and there really isn't some major backstop of 50 people behind you, helping you along. And so at that time, I was learning that and building a practice, seeing patients, but at the same time, learning the business, doing cost analysis, negotiating for machines, equipment, real estate, space, hiring staff, managing them, kind of setting up protocols, like doing all these things from all the way down to sort of par levels of syringes that we needed to keep in stock. So it was a really great learning experience, and started my gave me two things. And one, and the understanding that I actually enjoyed and was fairly good at sort of some of the business aspects of practicing medicine, so which is essentially a small business. And secondly, also gave me some basic knowledge about business practices, and that I might want to kind of explore that further in my career later on. And so that really, I think, gave me sort of those two aspects. But after that 7 years, I mean, it was a tremendous experience. It was very exhausting and it was quite tiring, but it was very rewarding. And by the end, I had a phenomenal team, I had a thriving practice, and really enjoyed that time in my career.
And then, you had the opportunity after that to go to the Mayo Clinic, and continue your career path. So tell us about making that, like, that's a big shift, right?
Yes.
Operating your practice,
Yes.
and having that team and giving up that baby, right?
Right.
Which is
Yes.
in a sense, you're an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
And blood, sweat, and tears, and then going back into the clinical practice. How did you find that transition?
Yes, I obviously, I won't lie, it was a little bit bumpy after having, full control over everything, and then going into a very large existing sort of legacy type organization where everything was highly structured already. So things were much slower to change, which was one of the points that always was difficult for me to accept. But the advantages of being at a very large, very well-resourced organization is that, the types of medicine and the complexity of medicine that you could really feel comfortable practicing was exponentially higher. So then I was all of a sudden and I was still able to do some of that building aspects, because there were programs like this aortic disease program that was not really fully built. So I sort of took charge of that and built that part of it within the larger organization. So I still had that some avenue for that, building aspect that I enjoyed. But at the same time, had these incredibly well-resourced, not only colleagues, but also the institution and organization itself. So you could really feel comfortable and excited about doing high complexity medicine. And that's, of course, what an organization like Mayo Clinic really excels at. Super high complexity, multiple sort of teams involved with every single patient type of medicine, and which was quite a bit different from, a practice that was very general in Oregon, that I would see anyone off the street, from super complicated to as simple or straightforward as it gets. So that was a big difference. I would say it was also a great place to learn in a different way, and I enjoyed my time there.
So how did you transition from there to where you are now? Going into the corporate world, as they would say, which I made transition from clinical to corporate myself, and it's exciting but a bit frightening as well.
Sometimes. Yes. I would say that I started. It took a lot of exploration. I mean, I really thought about that and talked to maybe close to 100 physicians who had somehow were doing something different than clinical medicine or research type medicine, which I knew very well from all my years in practice and training. So I really sort of interviewed and did a lot of informational interviewing, and really started to gain an understanding about what all these different ways to be a physician actually mean. And I ended up finding this opportunity that was at a startup. So it's a very small company. It's about 50 people now. I was probably, I think, number 30. So very small, did not have that feel of a large corporate entity, and was highly dynamic. So a lot of parallels to sort of starting my own practice in Oregon, where, you could take the reins, you could take charge. Nobody was really, dictating of how things should be done. In fact, in a startup, it's actually valued to have a self-starter and someone who just tries and tries and fails fast, and tries different things. So I think I really enjoy that part of it. And then beyond that, the team and the people that I've met at the startup are phenomenal, and that always, to me, is probably number one on my list of criteria of deciding who to work with.
And so maybe tell us about the company and the products, why you chose them.
Sure.
What inspired you to join them?
Yeah. So, I think obviously the first thing was that it was a good fit for me. They were looking for a cardiologist. We're talking about, blood pressure control, its outcomes. So for a cardiologist, that's so close to what I had been doing for so many years. Secondly, the idea of looking at these problems, cardiovascular disease and all the blood pressure driven diseases from the preventive side, or from the side of trying to reduce the likelihood that someone has significant bad events in the future, was very appealing to me after a career of taking care of people after they've had some event or after they were having some problem, which was great to help them. And it's wonderful that we have procedures, surgeries, tools to help people. But at the same time, I think there's a potential to have much more impact if you work the problem from the beginning. So those were the ideas that got me interested. And what Aktiia has really developed is the core technology that our founders have developed over 20 years is a method, a new technology to use an optical signal that's from a very simple, straightforward bracelet that you can wear on your wrist, that shines a light into the skin of your wrist and gets a reflection back. And it can derive, using their algorithm, it can actually calculate blood pressure and heart rate on a real-time, passive, automatic, and continuous basis. So you can get, just by wearing the bracelet, continuous types of readings of blood pressure and heart rate over long periods of time, which is so dramatically different than how we, look at and manage blood pressure today.
And, just some questions about it. I did do some research, but wearable technology, smart technology is really a big part of the future in medicine. And, products of medical device, such as Aktiia. But and everybody is looking at, whether, I have an Apple Watch and I love it.
Yeah.
And I use it for sleep, and I look at my heart rate, exercise and that sort of thing. But I think the thing that's key about your product, which I really loved, because when I sold medical device products and managed a team, a lot of the products were about prevention, not necessarily, we had products obviously that were dealing with the issues at hand, just like you're talking about, you're treating, acute issues. But if we could be at the front end, the preventative, and for years, over 20 years, we've been talking about that in medicine. But that's where I think the smart technology comes in, such as your product. Can they wear that product while they're wearing other products?
So the answer is yes. So you can wear this if you're wearing another wearable or watch or whatever. It's very simple. It's very thin. It's very lightweight. Many of our customers actually even like the simple design. This is, Swiss design. And so, it's a very, very nice design, and most people like it. And we're obviously experimenting with different designs of the strap and making it kind of customizable for people. But I think you're right. So that for sure is an issue because there's so many other wearables. And, but at the same time, this is the only one that's not just a commercial wearable. It is a class 2 medical grade product that has regulatory approval in the markets where we sell them. So, we've done extensive scientific validation and testing. Is all published, all on our website, about its accuracy and its sort of scientific credentials. And we think and that's how we approach the problem in our approach generally to the company, is to have full and complete scientific grounding as much as we can. So I think that is really where the difference is between sort of Aktiia's product and I think almost every other type of commercial wearable, because most of those are really designed for sort of features and user experience, which is all great. I'm a heavy user of a lot of those other companies that make those, but those are not medical grade devices by and large. And so I think that's the primary difference between the two. And so while it has the convenience and footprint of a commercial wearable, it also has the accuracy and scientific credentials of a medical product. So I think that's where we are trying to take advantage of and be the best of both worlds.
And I think, that's the point that I wanted to drive home today, is that so many people are buying the products, the commercial products versus, the class 2, and they're not aware of them. And
Correct.
It's really increasing that knowledge base and the awareness out in the public, so that, a lot of that's driven asking their physicians, just like their medicine and other things that they go to. So once I think the public become more aware of, what their options are, right? So a lot of people are buying the commercial products because there is a need there, right? They want to be able to monitor their heart. They're looking for things, but they don't know that there are products like that out there. So, once you really are building more of your market out there too, and get that awareness out to the customers, whether it be the physicians or obviously the end user, the patient. I'll use the word patient, or however you're marketing. I think that's great, and it's a preventative, and that's, people want to be in charge more of their health.
I think there's a tremendous need, and I think that people, as you said, we are seeing that already in the markets that we're in. There is a significant demand from the end user, patients, people, to really start taking better charge of their health.
And I know when we talked, and I won't repeat the statistics, but one of the key reasons that you were attracted to it is because of really what the percentage of populations that are suffering from increased blood pressure and the impact that something like this from a preventative standpoint. Could you just share some of those statistics that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty staggering, and sometimes that makes them less tangible. So, I mean, just to say globally, worldwide, hypertension or high blood pressure is the world's most common chronic disease. It affects 1.4 billion people in the world. In the United States, as an example, it's 130 million adults. By the age of 65, it'd be 1 in 2, at least US adults, but almost 50% of people in the Western world will have hypertension. So the control rates globally, meaning the number of people, percentage of people who have hypertension who actually have it under control by standard guidelines, 20%. So not only is it exceedingly common, it is also fairly, generally on a population level, fairly poorly managed. And it is the primary input into a number of diseases. The first is cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 cause of death and disease in the world, but it also affects your kidneys, your aorta, or the major arteries of your body. It can affect cognitive health, and there's significant links to dementia of certain types, and even reproductive health. So it affects so many other organ systems, although generally people tend to focus on cardiovascular. That's not really where hypertension stops. And so the last thing I guess I would just mention is that to really try to bring it home to people is that even if you personally don't have it, and maybe you don't get it in the course of your lifetime, it is almost certain that somebody in your family will, whether it's your mother, brother, father, sister, children, aunts, uncles, somebody is going to be affected by it. It is so common, it is almost inescapable. So that's why it's such a large problem that affects so many people, and causes so many different types of death and disease.
Yeah, I agree. And it's I was watching something on dementia yesterday, and they were talking about the hypertension and preventative things that we can do, both from diet and hypertension and so forth. And people don't recognize that, like, that's a huge problem in dementia. To your point. So and heart attacks, etc. So it's scary. But I did not realize it was one out of 2 people. So it's kind of staggering. I'm gonna I want to get one for all my family members. I have 3 boys I'm very protective of, and a husband. So that's what I got to say about that. But so talking about working in a startup and perspectives there, What unique perspectives do you have in terms of trying to commercialize products like that? Your products that we're talking about here, what have you found sort of challenges or things that you try to overcome to get these products in individuals' hands, right, to really get it out in the market?
One of the biggest challenges is that, and we hold ourselves up to it, is that we never wanted to create just a commercial, non-regulated product, because all blood pressure devices are regulated medical devices. But taking that challenge on is a huge hurdle, meaning that you have to deal with regulatory agencies all over the world that have different criteria, oftentimes, for what is acceptable. And the bar to get regulatory approval is so significant that it actually, that's why you see many other sort of consumer electronics companies not even approach the regulated medical space, because it's so complex and difficult. So that is definitely one of the challenges, and we've had some success, but it remains a significant challenge as we expand our footprint through the world. But it's one that we're going to continue to, well, we won't give up on it, because we think it's so important for people to be able to trust their own data, and and the regulatory approval goes a long ways for people to really trust the product, and that it is a truly medical device, significant medical device. And we continually doing research to support that scientific grounding of our product. So it is a challenge that we hold to ourselves, but it is a significant challenge in any regulated medical device product. But I think that is, and certainly it's even more so, is to link back to a startup that has 50 people doing it, across markets across the world. It is certainly something that I would say is one of the cardinal challenges, other than just having people understand that this innovation, this core innovation that our founders have come up with, honestly, is a technology that could replace an existing technology that's been around for over a century. That the standard cuff that we use for measuring blood pressure is 100-year-old technology, really. And so, really changing that mindset of physicians, of people, of anyone who's using that cuff, that's a big shift in something that's been around for so long. So.
When you think of the blood pressure cuff, it's funny you bring that up, because, as a nurse, it's kind of your mainstay tool, right? For
sure, yeah.
But, when you've had your blood pressure, half the time they don't have the right cuff. Half the time they can't find one, right?
Yes,
it's
exactly.
like, it's constant, or the cuff doesn't stay on, or I mean, it's just something else. Okay. And I laugh because, it's been a number of years since I've nursed, for sure, but it boggles my mind, because it's not an accurate blood pressure reading when it's like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's to your point.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, when you think about, the way that your blood pressure is supposed to be measured by all guidelines and by all validation criteria of all cuffs, it's only in one fundamental position and environment. And that position is seated with your back against a chair, feet flat against the floor, arms at heart level. You should not have eaten for 30 minutes, no drinking for 30 minutes, no caffeine, no alcohol, no exercise, no children around, don't talk, don't be talked to, no clothing on your sleeve, nothing in your bowels, nothing in your bladder. And then you take your blood pressure. And just, I mean, you're a nurse and I'm a physician. Just think about that. Even in the medical settings, when actually do we take a blood pressure in that scenario? It is stuff like that. It's never, so, but that is the only time, that is the only position, to your point, is that it is extremely difficult, even with the existing cuffs, and they've been around forever, to actually get that really accurate, blood pressure measurement, which is one of the innovations of Aktiia, and the way our founders really developed the product is for you to just set it and forget it. And you don't have to think about your body position and where you are and the environment you're in, because honestly, that's probably more reflective of your overall blood pressure trends rather than that highly controlled environment and position. and I think that gets to sort of the key perspective that we have at Aktiia, is that we don't think, and it's pretty consistent with physiology, that one blood pressure measurement at 1 second at one point in the day actually has a significant, meaning to understanding your real blood pressure pattern, because blood pressure changes, fluctuates every minute, every hour, every week. It continually fluctuates. So to really have a good understanding of your overall blood pressure pattern, you need to take many measurements at many points in the day over a long period of time. And again, that is how fundamentally blood pressure causes death and disease. It's not 1 day, 1 week, 1 hour, or even 1 month. It's over years, decades of time that really, create those damage to the brain, the eyes, the heart, the kidneys, all the different organs that blood pressure affects. And so it's that idea of understanding your blood pressure and its consistency over a long period of time. That's what Aktiia has really been built for and designed for.
So currently you have 50 people on your team. Is your product available in the market? Like how are people able to get the product now? Whereabouts are you in the commercialization, or are you there yet?
We're in the market in the EU and the UK, and have been in the market there for, I think, almost 2 years. Canada, Australia, New Zealand opens in 2 months, in August. We're already sort of have the website up and are taking pre-orders, and we're looking to start deliveries in August or September. And then, of course, the US market launch would follow probably 12 to 18 months, depending on regulatory again. And we're thinking of rolling out. Also, we have regulatory approval and access to India, so that would be another market that we would open. But I think the next most immediate ones would be Canada and Australia.
So it's online orders, is how they get them?
So mostly right now it's all online through our website, and we do delivery through our own logistics partners. We are experimenting with Amazon, but right now the vast majority is just through our website, aktiia.com. You can get on the mailing list, and you can even, if you're in a market that we're opening soon, you can put your name down to be notified when shipping is available.
Right, great. And so is there, and I know when we talked before, like the UK, like there's certain areas that you can get through regulatory, I won't use the word more easily, because that's not even the way it works. It's just that you can understand and go through the regulatory process. That it's an easier process to understand, and in Canada, it's a delayed, and the US is even more delayed with FDA. So, Health Canada, it can be tough as well, but because I work with a lot of companies around that, and play some regulatory people and stuff, but it's tough. And you're right. And there are a lot of companies that don't want to invest in Canada. There are a lot of companies that don't want to invest in the US because of the cost and the journey that takes is very difficult. But I'm glad to see that you've done that. And,
yes.
That's fantastic. So, as we wrap up our conversation, is there, what's next? Are you looking at any other wearable technology that you're thinking of? Is there, what do you see on the horizon?
Well, we're focused on, at this point in time, we are just sort of starting the growth process for, in the markets we are in, and are sort of nascent in those markets. And then, as I said, expanding to new markets like Canada and Australia in the immediate future, and then really large other markets in the next year or two. I think that's really where our focus is, and really optimizing our technology, software, and services for the customers. I think before, really diversifying to many other types of technologies or other things, we really, really want to just listen to our customers and really understand what we're doing well, what we think we're doing well, but what actually we're doing well from a customer's point of view, and where we need to get better. And I think that refining processing, just creating a really seamless, great experience for the user is the real overarching goal in the next year or so. And what we have right now is this core technology that delivers blood pressure and heart rate. And that's great. That's a huge innovation. But around that, we want to start to layer, because we have the advantage of having software that sits on your mobile device, we want to start to layer individualized, personalized sort of care plans, interventions, and sort of tracking optimization tools that are all related to blood pressure and blood pressure driven diseases. And we want to sort of really build out that software platform that should make that experience with not just tracking your blood pressure, but also putting the patient, the user, in the driver's seat to really optimize their own health over the long period of time.
Yeah, I think, that's fantastic, because it's one thing to see it, but to not understand what does that mean, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And, whether that's the patient being able to monitor it, or the physician portal as well, that, there's so much communication that's being shared now between, at least in Canada, and I know the US is doing that a lot too, but where, the patients are seeing their blood work, they're seeing your CAT scans, MRIs, everything. So they might not understand it, but at least they're getting the results and feeling more involved in their care, as opposed to, totally in the dark. And that's, I think that's a great option for everybody. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your journey, first and foremost, and Aktiia, and what is happening there, and the opportunity that individuals will be able to access the technology, and as you're growing as well. And I look forward to seeing where your journey takes you, and the product, and the company as well. So I think it's fantastic. I'm excited myself to see when it's here in Canada. I'll be ordering one for sure. I can't wait. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.